We stand on the brink of monumental change this decade, with opportunities that could exceed our wildest dreams. When these transformations unfold, we will recognize their significance, but it may be too late to embrace the journey ahead. Welcome to The Future Was Yesterday, a podcast where we discuss the metaverse, not just as a virtual space, but as a pivotal moment in time when our real and digital lives intersect to create a new world. The name comes from a conversation I had with a startup founder who noted that every technological or social advance we see in the news or online has already occurred, and how we are just left to figure out how to react to this new reality. To talk about the changes that AI will bring to our world, I want to present my guest today. Tullio Siragusa is a seasoned business strategist, author, and speaker renowned for integrating disruptive technologies with emotional intelligence, EQ, to drive transformative growth. As the founder of Inventrica Advisory and the EmpathIQ Framework, he provides strategic guidance, serving as a fractional COO, strategic advisor, and leadership coach. An accomplished author, Tullio has written extensively on leadership, innovation, and self management. His published works are available on Amazon, where he explores themes of emotional intelligence, business transformation, human centric leadership, and purpose driven success. Tullio explores the intersection of emotional intelligence and AI, showing how the future of leadership blends intuition with innovation. And here is the conversation I had the privilege to have with him.
I think we're going to go through a new renaissance before we realize it. Think about the printing press. It was a technology that gave birth to the ability to have a voice at scale. That's what the printing press gave birth to. But concurrent with the printing press, also a great renaissance happened. Art, poetry. There was a desire for the emotion, the romantic age, right? So to a certain degree, if we're not careful, AI can lead us down this path of extreme loneliness. And worse, this idea that you have digital overloads that are now running companies. Okay.
Yeah.
Like the Borg, it's a serious thing. Resistance is futile, like the Borg, right? But, I mean, that could happen. But very quickly, people will realize, again, because we have a human need for connection. And I actually spoke to a few VCs. I said, what's coming in 10, 20 years? And they were like, what's coming is actually a big resurgence of just the need for connection. People will look for ways to have human-to-human interaction. They will look for people that can help them have relationships, with other humans. And so there are 4 key tenets that keeps companies with employees that are highly engaged. There's 4 of them. I discovered these through a lot of research when we co-founded radicalpurpose.org. A few of us who are self-management practitioners and behavioral therapists and psychologists all came together and researched what keeps people engaged. Why are some cultures benefiting from highly engaged employees and most cultures are not, which is actually a huge epidemic. I think like 80% of employees are disengaged worldwide, which means people show up to work and they dread going to work. Imagine having a society that just hates going to work and the fault is in the companies that have forgotten the human element of running business. They're so driven by just performance at all costs that have forgotten to be human-like. It's awful. So they lack emotional intelligence and empathy. But there's the four key tenets that we discovered And if you synergize all four, you'll have everything I had mentioned earlier: super engaged culture, friendship model, team that can't be stopped. Number one is the need to belong to something greater than yourself. That's an innate human need, which is why religion and politics is so big. People want to belong to something greater than themselves, right? Two is the need for meaning. Why am I doing this? What's the purpose behind this? Is there a mission? Give me meaning behind what I'm doing and why I'm doing it. Again, same reason those environments are so big. And also why people have families and children and get married. They want to have meaning behind their lives.
But right? This in that regard, do you think that this overall lack of meaning that a lot of people here as well, a lot of people is feeling that it's not a mystery or a secret. A lot of people is feeling that. Do you think it's a disconnection or a result of I'm saying a disconnection between the world we expect to live in when we are in the school and the reality, or a disconnection between, or it's fault of the companies and the business that they are not creating, they are creating products, but they are not seeing their products as a service to their communities or their people, that it's the customers, their clients. And so when they don't see it as a service and just as a product, they don't put meaning in what they are offering or something.
Yeah. I'll answer that in just a second. The short answer is yes, but there's an elegant answer which ties into all the four tenets. The third one is also the ability to make an impact. We have a desire to make an impact, which is why activism and having a family and all those things are still important to people. And finally, the need to be growing, to be becoming, which is why the self-help industry is like at $1 trillion, right?
Mm-hmm.
And they all have one thing in common. The way you synergize all these things is is a need for purpose. Without purpose, there's no meaning to anything. Without purpose, you can never belong to something greater than yourself. What are you belonging to? What's greater? How do you make an impact towards something without purpose? How do you grow? How do you develop skills to achieve achieve what? Right? This is a big problem. That's why mental health is such a problem. Even with teenagers, they're in front of their TikTok all day. There's no purpose. So often enough to say, what's the point of my life? So it's a lack of purpose, and it's pervasive across all of society. But businesses aren't contributing either. Some do extraordinarily well. There are some companies who model what that looks like Patagonia. Mm-hmm. And others. They have clear purpose. They're trying to do something good. Like that's what consciousness capitalism is about. It's the triple bottom line, good for the planet, good for people, good for the bottom line. Unfortunately, there's a lot of focus on just what's good for the bottom line. Like shareholder value is not a purpose. It's an outcome, or it could be a mission towards achieving a purpose, right? The purpose could be broader, have impact on humanity. And to achieve that purpose, you want to create shareholder value because there's people investing in your purpose along with you. Now it becomes a vehicle towards that purpose, not the purpose in itself. So without purpose, there's no meaning. And without meaning, there's no fulfillment.
Yeah.
So you have a society that's unfulfilled. Like, what is this all for, right? So that's the key thing that's missing. And purpose is shared. You can't just have a few people to decide what it is and then force everybody else to be compliant. We are in a very compliant environment at work, at school. We're teaching and enforcing compliance. And I'm not saying now go be a rebel, don't be compliant. I'm saying that compliance is coming from a few people make that decision, everybody else has to comply. The way it works is through shared authority, shared equivalence, right?
Yeah.
In other words, we want to do something new as a company. Let's get everybody else talking about it. Does this align with everybody's shared values? Does this meet everyone's desire? Because we all have needs. The more disconnected you are from understanding that people have needs, human needs, the less successful you're going to be in creating connection. So we're not going to solve all of societal's problem, right?
Yeah.
But at least in the business world, at least that's the area we can have some impact because we spend most of our time there. If we can reshape the way we think about business as something that can be purposeful, meaningful, impactful, something that can create opportunities for people to grow, to contribute, to become more. If you create an environment where you enable that, then people are happy, feel fulfilled. Guess what happens to your business? You can't compete with your business. You become an unstoppable business because you got people that are bought into your mission because they contributed to it. They defined it.
Yeah.
That's the key thing. You have to turn the whole pyramid upside down. Instead of top down, be bottom up. And I'm not talking about being flat as an organization because flat doesn't work either, right? Now, the difference is this hierarchy because of titles, which means you're complying with someone's title because they've been given that title. Mm-hmm. And then there's hierarchy because there's leaders willing to serve others, which means you're following someone who serves you, right? So there's a difference. Hierarchy given by title, hierarchy earned through merit. So what I'm proposing is creating a model where you earn hierarchy through merit, where people will follow you because they get something from it and they value who you are. You stand for something. They want more of that. And then they step into that as well. That's the key goal of a leader. Create other leaders, not to boss people around.
Yeah, it's and as I mentioned it earlier, it's very resounding with the military doctrine, military way of seeing leadership. Not that you need to foster in your crew, in your platoon, in your team, that the moment that you are not there to lead, someone has to pick the flag and carry on, and everyone has to be ready to take their share. And before we are finishing, because this is the last minutes we have, I would like to, if you can, a couple of questions. First, regarding AI and kids, how do you think that will be a good or a healthy way to let the kids approach the use of AI for their homeworks, for their everyday tasks? And the other thing is, if you can very briefly reflect about, are we going into two different bubbles of world? One, like in the US, that it's innovation almost like limitless, and here in Europe it's well-being but a lot of regulations. Are we going to touch this topic in our near future?
Well, I guess it all comes down to who's leading the way. Is it people collectively, or is it a few who assume what the collective needs? Mm-hmm. And that's always been the big question, right? So kids in AI, kids are highly disconnected today. They need help with social emotional learning skills, how to deal with emotions. Parents are disconnected because they're busy trying to feed them, and also they're distracted by a lot of the digital distractions. So you've got a society that's in trouble in terms of kids. Kids are growing up lonely. They feel connected through all these technology, but they're not spending enough time together. So I worry about kids and their future. Now, AI could cater to try to mimic having someone to talk to. There's some great tools for that where you can talk to someone so it feels as though you have a companion. So there could be some value for kids in terms of giving them access to a companion, or who could be a good, even like a good mentor or coach, or even a therapist, just to help them make sense of the world and everything around them. And that AI is going to do probably a way better job in most cases than ill-informed or poorly informed parents, right? But they still need love, human touch, human connection.
Yeah.
So if it can be coupled with as an aid, but ultimately not one that replaces the human connection, you could have kids that become well adjusted in a world where they have access to help. That's been democratized. That's the beautiful thing, right? So if you're growing up in a family of parents that are highly emotionally intelligent, you're going to be growing up differently than a family where they're not. So technology can equalize that for kids. So that's a good thing. It's a net positive. But somehow we have to find a way to make sure these kids are interacting in a real human way. And that's where sports come in and other things like that, I think, that are going to continue. I hope they're going to continue, right? But you can use AI to benefit kids if it's designed to democratize access. So in other words, you create an equalization where no kid gets left behind, right? In terms of this bubble you talk about, again, it comes down to purpose and shared purpose, and respecting people like adults. That's always their underlying problem, right? It's like when you're a child, you need guidance because you don't know what to do, right? So you need guidance. And even a really good parent won't just tell kids, here's what you do. They will reason with them. They will explain things to them and aid them to make good choices. Treat them with respect. That's called respect, and treating someone with dignity. You can do that even with your children. Now, when you treat adults that way, like do this, comply, that's not dignified. That's disrespectful, right? So it's acknowledging that people are perfectly capable of making tough decisions. We make them every day. Where to live, whether to have children, whether to get married, what job to have. All these are difficult, complex, life-altering decisions. And some are better at it than others, right? But we still have this ability to make these decisions as adults. So why assume that people can't make good decisions? Like only a few can make decisions for them. Unfortunately, there is a disparity of how well some make decisions versus others because of lack of knowledge, because of that lack of education. So that's a real issue, right? AI can equalize all that.
Yeah.
So if AI is used to create democratized access to information, to education, to insights, to knowledge, now you can democratize how information flows where no one feels like they've missed out because they didn't have access to the right education or the right parenting, etc. So if done correctly, AI can be a force for good and can contribute to society's well-being. But we still have the problem with greed and selfishness, and I don't know how we're going to solve that. But I think we need divine intervention for that one. But if you are in a position to contribute in a positive way for AI to contribute to the well-being of kids and adults, then do it. At least in the business world, that's what I'm trying to do, is try to influence something that can be a net positive and give people a sense of empowerment and create more equivalence, more shared purpose, more empowerment. And hopefully they'll take that into their communities as well. We all have to do our part. Each one of them has to choose where we can do that part.
I remember once I heard the CEO, if a business is not ethical, it's not business.
One of the questions we ask at the end of every Bliss Business podcast with all the CEO guests that we have on there is we ask them, do you believe love belongs in business? Because Bliss stands for building love into the system, right? And I was interviewed on the show myself, and they asked me, do you believe love belongs in business? And my answer was, business is an expression of love. You have to go back to why you created the company to begin with. What were you trying to solve? What motivated that decision? There must either because maybe you went through something difficult and you're like, I don't want other people to go through this either. I want to solve this for other people. That's an expression of love.
Yeah.
If you decided to just build a business to make money, well, who does that money benefit? Maybe you're trying to feed your family, or you have an elderly parent that's sick. That's still a motivation of love. So when you connect to the root of why business is being created to begin with, it should be an expression of love. So how can we go back to this idea of infusing love in business? Because it belongs there. So if we focus on how it's an expression of love, then it becomes meaningful, right? It's this idea of like the person who invented the chair. The chair has personal value, right? I need to use a chair. I'd like to use a chair. Well, everybody use a chair. Yeah, everybody could use a chair. So it had broader value. Can the chair be made from sustainable material? Absolutely. It can be made from wood. It could be made from metal, right? And so it had universal value, right? When all these virtues came together, that makes it an extraordinarily valuable product because it creates something good for me, for everyone. It's sustainable. It's universal, right? That's an expression of love. That's what love is, right? It's a verb. So if you bring those four things together, you've been successful. So when companies synergize what they're doing the same way, can we do good by our employees? Can we do good by our customers? Can we do good to the planet? Is a universal. Are we doing something sustainable? Meaning now you have a purpose as a business, right? Once you have a purpose, that's an expression of love, which is why we always talk on the show about being purpose-driven. And even in the creation of AI CMO, which is a empathy-led marketing platform, if first thing you do in building your profile is a purpose builder, right? Mm-hmm. It's like, let's give your business some purpose, right? Because it becomes the root of all your campaigns. Once your campaigns are rooted on purpose and empathy, then it resonates with the people who see the ad. And we've seen 56% improvement in click-through rates with that, right? So, but it all stems from purpose. Purpose is an expression of love. so my short answer is we need more love in business. We need to express business as a form of love. And when you reconnect to that, it changes your dynamics for everything. And here's the funny thing. You know, some of us have been talking about this for 2 decades and we were called the crazies, you know, fluffy stuff, whatever. But now you have tons of data from Deloitte, McKinsey, everyone proving, wow, these principles actually do produce better results, better profitability, better long-term growth, better engagement, better productivity.
Yeah.
So the numbers are there. So why are they not teaching this in MBA programs? It's strategically imperative to shift. It's not just a nice thing. It's strategic to your business impact. The data's there, right? But that requires some rewiring and rethinking. Yeah. And hopefully we'll get there. But right now we're at that inflection point where some of us are pushing it and some are like, I don't know. So
one day at a time.
One day at a time.
It's a wonderful way how to end this conversation. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Have a wonderful day.
You too. Thanks.
Bye.